All righty. So give me just a second. I'm gonna go get my extra water and one extra sheet of watercolor paper. I'm actually cutting this. I've got a big sheet here. You guys were gonna want a couple watercolor sheets. Here's my scissors. Um, a few extra sheets, and you might want like kind of a half sheet at the for the final exercise. Something maybe this size or maybe bigger, a little bit bigger. But for the moment, you can just have a regular watercolor sheet of paper. And we've got water. Let's not forget our blankies. And we're going to start this lesson with something we did at the beginning of the year, which is we're going to practice painting, doing washes using wet on wet technique and the wet on dry technique. So what is the wet on wet technique? I am going to give you a little square here because it's a little bit hard to see unless I've got the square, well, rectangle. If I want to do a wet on wet solid wash, I'm taking a fairly, it's kind of a smallish brush because I'm working on a full area. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm actually just taking water and wetting the inside of this square. I'm wetting the paper so that when I go in and do a single wash, let's do it in this kind of pinky color, like this. I'm loading my brush with water, kind of testing it on the side here, right? And then I'm pulling it across wet paint onto wet paper. And you'll see that a couple of things are happening. One is that this sort of pool of slightly darker paint is collecting on the sides because it's moving around. What's happening is we're laying it down and it's moving around with the water. So you notice I haven't gone back in to get more paint. I might now. But I am kind of moving around this little bloom. I'm kind of chasing it almost all around the square. My goal is to get, once it dries, a fairly even, consistent tone. Working with, that's pretty good, wet on wet. So this is solid wash, wet on wet technique. And I am happy to do this a couple more times. I'd love to see you guys start that.
What color do you want us to do for this?
Whatever you want, just one color.
Okay.
Can be any color you want. This is a single, I should say, single color. Solid wash. And solid means it's not like darker and lighter. It's kind of a consistent wash across the board. This is harder. It's harder than it looks. So if you have to try it a couple times, try it a couple of times. This is a challenging technique, but it's a really good technique to get a grasp on. It's a great way, for example, to start a painting with kind of a lightish wash, where you can layer stuff on top. And we'll experiment with that when we get to our washes where we create a kind of little simple seascape. We'll talk about that. If you would like me to repeat that again, I can bring the camera down lower. I can do that over again. So you let me know if you'd like to see it again, but also just try it. The first time I tried it, I was like, what? This is terrible. No, it's like, it's a little hard to control. If you think you've got it, send it over the thread. If you're struggling with it, send it over the thread and I'll take a look and I'll do another demo. I will say that this got easier the more I practiced it. Let's see. Not bad, Jonathan. Nice. Did you find that difficult?
No.
All right. Beth, how's it going for you? You are off the there.
It is okay. I'll take a picture of it and
Yeah,
send it,
send
and
it
also
over.
of my reds.
Nice. I'm gonna give myself another square. Thank you. That would be great. Our second experiment is going to be called a single color, any color, solid wash, wet on dry. So what does that mean? Thanks, Beth. Love that. Oh yeah, that looks great. Okay, all of that quin is not a quin, Beth. What does it say quinacridone red? That's the problem.
I think I think I the top one under Quinn, um, I think I
None of
messed
those
up
look
something.
none of those look pink to me. And when I say
Oh,
pink,
okay.
let me show you. It should look pink. If you have colors that are warm and fiery like that, you're not going to get a purple. That's why I wanted to
Oh,
look at your reds because I was like, so we'll talk about it. Anyway, nice work on the solid wash single color technique. Now we're going to try. So, but this is good. This helps me. I'll send you over a little bit in a little while. So in this case, we are not going to wet the paper. The paper is going to be dry. And we're going to do a solid wash. I still want a consistent wash, but on dry paper. Can you see how I'm coming down? I'm actually resting my hand on the edge of my paper to really study. And I have to scoop up a lot more paint. So notice I went back to my paint palette tray like 4 times. I think I only did it once with the wet on wet technique. I'm still kind of pushing around, trying to blend in my those little bubbles that show up. But in this case, the paper is dry. Yeah. And while you're doing that, I'm going to take a picture, Beth, of my pink, my quin red to show you what it looks like. Oops. Because I still feel like the Zoom screen isn't great for that. Just doesn't. Moving it around the studio to see if I can get a better view of it. Yeah. Sitting here. Oh, and really, I should have put my warmer red next to it. So here's my Quinn red. I'll do it again. Better. All right. So, where are we? Go. So here I'll pop this back up so you can see what I'm talking about. I just sent it over the thread so you can look at it. Um, you might be having similar problems to me to actually showing what this color looks like, but can you see the difference between Quinn red and Cad red? Here it
Yeah.
is darker and here it is lighter. I'm not
Uh,
seeing that difference in your paints. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah.
So are they Quinn red or is it mixed with Cad red? So you need a red that's like this, that's cool. If you use something that's kind of fiery and orange, you'll never get a purple. You'll get mud, you'll get brick color,
Mhm.
you'll get other colors that are cool, but you will not get that bright, beautiful purple unless you've got something that's kind of that hue. So that's what I wanted to pin down. And we'll talk more about it as we go. And by the way, how did this one go, guys?
Okay,
How did solid color wet on dry go?
I don't know.
You want to send it over?
Yeah.
You want to try it again? So the difference between wetting the paper beforehand and not wetting the paper afterwards. We're still trying to get the same results. Let's see. It's not bad. I see a few streaky vertical lines,
Yeah.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
that you might want to work, kind of get. It might go better to go horizontal across. Or maybe you did and you just flipped that around when you saw it. But
I did.
yeah, there we go. That's what happened. Okay, that's good. Then that makes much more sense to me. So, which was one easier than the other? Was one preferable to the other? Were they the exact same experience, or was there a difference between those two?
Um, I found that the wet on dry was harder to get rid of the streaks.
Interesting. So you liked the wet on wet.
The wet on wet, I was able to get it to look more uniform.
Oh,
Uh,
nice. Nice, Beth.
yeah. So,
Yeah, so that's interesting. Beth, what about you? I mean, you both did it. So which one did you think was easier and which one was harder?
I think
Or
I
was
also
there a
found
difference?
the wet a little bit. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I had different problems
Yeah, there
with
too.
each,
Some people
but
find that wet on dry is a little easier to control because the paint doesn't bloom out so much,
yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
not, but
Yeah.
if you learn that the paint is going to bloom out, you kind of follow it around. You're like with your brush, kind of following it around, scooting it like it's a little shovel or a little rake or something where you're kind of pushing things around, right, to make that work. Um, Excellent. Okay, so now we're going to try. Promise we'll get to something juicy and fun in this lesson. This is going to be a varied wash, one color. And that means it goes from dark to light or light to dark. So you're going to varied wash. We're going to start with wet on wet. So once again, you can pick the colors. It does not matter what colors you use. I'm going to start by getting I'm making my paint wet, my pot paper wet. And let's see, let's try something else. Try blue. Okay. I'm testing, I'm getting a little bit of extra color off my blue because I know if I start too dark, I need to start a little bit darker than I did with the varied wash. Because what I want is to go from light to dark. So I'm now kind of, or dark to light. I'm kind of going from dark to lighter. So notice I'm no longer dipping my brush in the paint, but I am trying to show a shift from a lighter to a darker color. You can do this either way, uh, with the darker on the bottom or the darker on the top. And we'd kind of I want you to work on making that transition as soft as possible. I'm adding a little bit more dark in here and kind of pushing it up. I'm trying to kind of evenly spread it, even though the water makes it kind of resist that. Also notice that when your watercolor's dry, they're always a little lighter. Oh, that's not bad. Uh, Not too bad. Varied wash. Dark to lighter, it's one color. Wet on wet. And of course, we're going to try this as well, wet on dry. Do you guys find this relaxing? I find this incredibly relaxing. I can have had a hell of a day and coming in and just pushing paint around gently feels amazing to me. I'm gonna go get a little bit of tea. Happy birthday. How is that one going? So I am not somebody who's had much formal training in watercolor. I've taken a couple courses, but since I don't use it in my daily work, this is something I always have to kind of study up on and practice. Um, and one of the things I really like about these basic moves is it didn't occur to me that I could wet the paper first. Did not occur to me that I had that option, right? That's not something that you think about when you think about doing it. So when I trained myself, I kind of trained myself as if I was painting oil or acrylic, where you can go dark and then layer your lights in, and the more layers, the better. But watercolor is a lot more delicate. You can't go too dark. If you go too dark, you can't go back. So it's a kind of building up of layers. It's a little bit trickier. It's delicate. However, it's also so expressive. I mean, just one stroke of watercolor is worth like 10 strokes on an acrylic or oil painting. There's probably acrylic or oil painters who'd argue with me on that, but it's all right. You guys want to send it over? How's it going? Do you want me to demo it again? I'm happy to do that too. Nice. Beth, good, good, good. Did you struggle with it or did you feel like you could kind of get there? I like how subtle you were. Um, I like how you pulled back your paint amount that you did from the first exercise, right? Like, so how did that feel? That's good.
Yeah, it that felt okay. It was yeah, it was kind of an experiment. I wasn't sure what I was
It
gonna end up with, so
it's a little hard, right? Because I'm asking you to control a little bit more in an uncontrollable medium. Jonathan, how about you?
Um, I don't know. I always have problem with this exercise. It always looks too stripy.
Bet is that you are going too hard, too much paint at the beginning, but I don't know. I'll take a look if you want to. Try it again. In the meantime, Beth, tell me the problem. Let's solve your purple problem. So you have a red that's kind of pink.
Yeah.
What's it
Um,
called?
or I don't actually I don't think I do. I have the queen I have the Quinn,
Quinn
and
what?
that's what I
Quinn
used
red?
for Quinn Red, yeah. And
Beautiful,
that's what I
Jonathan.
used for the varied wash. I don't know if that
Okay.
looks more.
No, it looks orange to me. Does it
Mm.
not look
It's
orange to you?
it looks a little orange to me too. Yeah,
This is the
it's
wrong
strange because
color.
it came in a tube that looks it has like a pink label, but yeah,
That's
it's
really weird. I wonder if like they actually
yeah
put the wrong paint in there or something. That's insane. All
yeah.
right, we'll get there. It's okay, but that's why you're having trouble because you don't have whatever you've got, it's not a pinky red. So we'll see what we can do. Jonathan, that was perfect. How did that go for you?
You
That
know,
was beautiful. You got three variations in there, which was super impressive.
the problem with this technique, because there's so much water on there from the wet on wet, is that on the right hand side, there's just like all this a pooling of dark paint that
You have to
happens.
kind of push it around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's the challenge for this one.
That's the challenge with all wet on wet. All
Yeah,
wet on wet does that, is that
yeah,
the paint blooms and it pools, usually because the paper's slightly bowed, so it kind of
yeah.
leans over to one side. So you kind of have to be aware of that as you're doing that. All right, next one, varied wash, single color, wet on dry. It can be any color, and let's see, let me get a different color. So I'm not going to wet the paper first. Let's put green into play. Oh, turquoise. I've got this very pretty turquoise. I'm gonna use that. Right? So I'm kind of starting heavy on the top. Yeah, mine and actually, oops, hang on. Sorry. There we are. I'm still having to push stuff around a bit,
Yeah.
but I'm dripping my brush in. So you still wind up a little bit dealing with wet on wet, even with wet on dry,
Yeah.
in my view. Okay, and now I've got all this stuff down here, which I'm going to push up here. Do you see that? See how I just aggressively push that up there. And then I'm grabbing a little bit more dark paint to kind of add to the darkness. And I want to soften this just a little bit. So I'm taking kind of the corner of my brush. Just soften it a little bit. But I definitely have a single varied wash, and that was wet on dry. Yeah, so I
I
guess the
find,
more you work wet on dry, the more wet it gets. So, like,
yeah,
it's
that's
not
what I
a,
was just about to say. You know, wet on dry becomes wet on wet eventually.
that's true, but it's still different. It's not as wet as
Right.
wet on. It's not as wet as wet on wet. So it's like half the water. But yes, that does happen. As this dries, it gets a little dark and sometimes it pools. So I'm continuing to kind of keep an eye on it and pool it around. I might not just a touch more.
What?
I also use my rag to kind of help it a little bit here too.
Your blankie.
Yeah.
I used my finger just now. I didn't like the result very much. I felt like it was a little too sharp. It's okay. At some point, you also have to stop painting because and let it dry. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
darken if you
exactly.
want to, and that might be what I do here. We'll see what happens.
Well, the thing is, when we paint for real, we we never actually go that dark that's on the top to start, you know? At least I don't. I
Um,
kind of like do like a whole light wash first and then build on it.
sure, sure. But that's just because that's how I've been showing you. That doesn't mean it's not. We might change that today
Okay.
as we paint for real, because I'm going to have you do a real painting once we do the last exercise, which is two color varied wash, wet on wet. So you might want to make a slightly bigger thing. And I'm going to do wet on wet first. So I'm making my, I'm using a bigger brush actually, interestingly. Got a little green in there. So I'm trying to, so I'm going wet on wet. I'm wetting my paper. And I'm going to pick two colors, maybe a blue for the bottom, which gets lighter as it goes up to about halfway. I find that harder to do than going the other direction. Interesting. That's my observation as I do it. To about, I'm using the corner of my brush a lot. That seems to be kind of controlling it a little bit. To about halfway. And then another color. You guys had fun with yellow. Let me see if I can find some good yellow. I don't have a good yellow in that set right now. Hang on. Let's see if I can find a good yellow. Where I start dark at the top, lighten it as it gets to the bottom half. So I think you can see where we're going with this in our bigger piece. Dark at the top, getting lighter as it comes. Darker at the bottom, getting lighter as it goes up until we kind of meet in the middle. That was wet on wet. And the last one, I'm still mucking with it. Dark. Um, is two color varied wash, wet or dry. I'm knocking on here. This is probably the most challenging. Trying to get out of my normal color rut here. Let's see. We'll start with like yellow. Ooh, that's dark. So I'm getting a lot of light on my brush. Oh, that's gamboge. What a great color. So I'm dragging some of that extra dark. This is wet on dry, so I haven't wet the paper first. Pushing dark up, and then blue. So these are techniques. It may be, Jonathan, that we haven't done very much of that, but we should have been, as a teacher, I should have been showing you more of this. How to, that's just because I'm not, as experienced a watercolor teacher as I am other things. Oops. Too little. And I actually got a couple of little pink splotches in there because I didn't clean my brush properly. This is actually really basically how a simple, one of those simple sunset land city water scenes is structured. It's kind of darker and heavier at the top. It gets lighter as it bounces as we hit the earth, right? This is all sky, this is earth, or in this case, water. And then the water is lighter in the back, and as you move forward, go down and come closer, it gets a little darker. I'm gonna send you a picture. It's all of these. I might continue to work on them a little bit too. Here, hold on. Spotlight for a second. Take a picture. Oh. And it's okay to practice this technique a couple times. What I'm going to have you do ultimately is take a bigger piece of paper, maybe half, um, maybe kind of a half size. And you can choose, right? We've just explored two techniques to do a varied wash. You're going to start with two colors. I'm going to say whatever colors you want. I'm not, but I want to do a varied wash. You can use the wet on wet technique or the wet on dry technique. And I'd like them to meet just a little bit below or above the middle, the two light washes. And then we'll talk about, and then we'll practice like kind of piling on top, which is more what you're talking about, Jonathan, that idea of like kind of starting loose and then getting piling more. At this point, you're probably going to want to use a bigger brush, but play around with I want to see your two color varied washes before we go there. By the way, how are you two? How's life?
Fine.
Yeah, okay here.
Yeah. How's the pups?
Uh, oh, they're good. They were, I don't know, they were unhappy a few minutes ago, but I think I gave them a treat and I think they're back to being satisfied.
To be a dog in Beth's house, or in Jonathan's house for that matter. Jonathan took very good care of his doggies too. Very,
Oh.
very good care. They often showed up as part of your art installations. It's very awesome. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I shouldn't have brought that up. It's sad.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I mean, they did live long lives.
They did.
They did, and they had good lives. He
Yeah.
had one dog that kept jumping off the the stair landing and falling.
Oh no. Oh.
How many floors? Was that Gershwin that kept doing
Bossy.
that?
Yeah. That was bossy.
Fosse. Twice.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
it ended
sweet.
up being 3 times.
Three
Oh my
times.
gosh. Wow. My old dog keeps falling off the bed, or she kept, well, she does, I guess, keeps falling off the bed, but I finally had the idea that I could lower my bed. So that's what I did.
She
My
doesn't
mattress is like
fall.
on the ground now.
Hmm.
Oh
So
my God, what we do
poor
for our
thing.
animals. I don't know. We just bought a new couch, or Rob just bought a new couch for the house, and within 24 hours, two cats had vomited on it. Like, totally.
Oh
It's
my
now
gosh.
just a stained new couch.
Oh,
Oh, they can sense it.
It's
Like
yeah.
they
like they can
know.
sense it. It's almost like they're marking it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I know, isn't that terrible? Did he tell you that? Muka just immediately within 24 hours vomited all over. And it's a
Oh
light blue
no.
couch. So,
Oh.
I mean, everything shows. Like, I remember thinking when he brought the couch in, I'm like, are you sure you want to? That's a pretty light colored couch. So now, anyway, yeah. Jonathan, do you have plans to get other pets, or are you just going to kind of,
Take it easy.
um,
We're gonna hold off for a while because
Hold off because
it,
you're going to be making changes at some point in the next year or
yeah,
two, right?
yeah. But also, it's just we're
It's a
just
lot.
enjoying the freedom. Able to go away for a weekend. We're also not like paying $1,000 a week at the vet.
Right. For when the dogs fall off the
Yeah,
whatever they're doing and
yeah. So
yeah,
it's taking a break.
that's good. How would you guys like me to start this with you, or do you feel like you know what to do? Do you want to show me your smaller ones first before we go on to the bigger one?
Sure.
The bigger one, this is going to be the first pass, a two-tone wash, right? That's variable, that's varied. That goes from dark to light and from dark to light. That will be our base, and then we're going to go on top with more colors, a little bit more detail. We're going to play around with it. You're going to start adding in things to make it look more like a sky meeting the water. And in my view, I don't care what color the water is. Could be blue, could be green, could be purple. All right, nice. How did this feel, Jonathan?
Oh, it's always hard for me.
Yeah, this is a hard one. So you got a little too heavy and dark on the top, and then you lost it. Did you add white?
No,
Okay, that's just the look of the paper. The top one looks great. So I agree with you. Wet on wet for you seems to be a really good technique. So I would use it. Beth is sending hers over. That seems to work really well for you. Let's see here. I just give myself, I'm taking a pencil and giving myself a little horizon line just so I know it lightly. I'm putting mine a little bit above. Let's see. Not bad. Good job. You guys are doing great on this. So you can do the very two color wet on dry. But when you're going to start your first water painting, technically, my suggestion is you either decide to work, you could go wet on wet for the whole thing. You could do one half wet. I'm going wet on wet for this top layer. And I want something that's going to pop. So I'm kind of mixing an orange. But you can do any colors that you want. So you're going to need a bigger brush. We're going to need a bigger brush. Like, I'm going to need a bigger boat, right? I'm using a big brush. I'm actually dipping my brush in water to get more water in there because I love this orange just to get lighter and lighter. And you will probably, because we're working bigger, run into more of the streaky problems. You're just going to work that as best as you can. If not on this layer, on the next one. And then I'm just basically stopping the top here. I don't think it's quite, well, I'm gonna add a little bit more to the top before this dries. This is wet on wet. So actually, I think that can, but I don't want it to be a heavy flat line between wet on wet and dry. So I'm really pushing that paint around. Let's see. Too much, maybe. Getting a little water. It's great. All right. You get up there. I got a little too crazy with my darks, so I pushed more water up there. There we go. I have a kind of slightly softer transition. Softer, slightly. And it's pretty light. It's not as Jonathan was pointing out, we're not going super heavy. If you're struggling to, my paper is kind of pouching up, so I'm going to tape it. Yeah. It's definitely pooping, which is causing the paint to peel. There we go. I'm just literally, right now, I'm just painting it to my desk. There we go. This here. This goes here. Gonna do the same thing with the other side. So it's not poofing out so much. You're welcome to do the same. No, too heavy. Even. You want to make it kind of even. That's better. I've lost, so because of all that poofing, I've lost a little of my dark. But I can also let it dry and then go over darker on top. So there we go. And then I can, what color do I want to pick? Water. I have this like great sort of turquoisey color, so I'm gonna pick that for the water. And this time I'm gonna try it on dry. You may find this easier because you have got more space, right? Explore the studio space. And then here's where, and then once it dries, here's where you get to have fun with it. You get to start layering more colors. You get to layer maybe a dark line in, maybe put a sun in, maybe put some waves in, right? So bigger here, smaller here. I want you kind of really the point is to practice this wash, which is our basis for everything, a lot of the things that we're going to do. So Jonathan, I think we will probably do something like this. Last year, I was a little bit more piece by piece by piece. I think I'm wanting us to get used to the idea of playing with kind of toning the paper first before we get too heavy. And now I'm basically waiting for it to dry. My varied wash is a lot less dramatic, but it is there. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Nice. Nice, Beth. Did you find wet on dry easier or harder?
I think easier for some
Yeah.
reason.
I think
Oh,
you're having to control even more. So wet on dry gives you slightly more control. Although, as Jonathan pointed out, once you get enough water on a dry paper, it becomes wet on wet. Those days are fleeting. So I'm going to pull this back. I'm gonna, yeah, I think I just put this right on top. I'm going to pull this jet back just for a moment because now these are really dry. And I can see that in some cases this is more successful than others. So I can actually go back in to a painting and darken, right? Once once it dries. Same it down here. I can go back in and kind of layer in a little bit darker, which is easier to do when it dries. So a lot of this you can do in layers. Um, you might play with your samples while you're waiting. Once you do this, you might play around with your samples by laying other colors on top, right? If you get your sample wet and do that, you're going to get one kind of thing, that kind of squishy. See how it's blooming, floating around. This is wet on dry, much more stiff. You can see lines, not as like, maybe perhaps not as atmospheric as I would want it to be here too. So as I'm like, I'm just kind of playing around with what happens if I bring in a little bit more color into the sky and put a little of the red that was here on here. So I can start to kind of build up a little painting from here. It can be the same color or a different color. You still want that. So as you're kind of waiting for this thing to dry when you can go on with other layers, mine's almost done. You can play around with layering on top of these, wet on wet, dry on dry, making little tiny seascapes, and then moving, once you're done with that, coming back to this one and moving to your bigger seascape. Mm. Here, just look at options, kind of fun things. If I want to, I can go back in with I have little teeny brushes. I'm still playing around on I can kind of add a more dramatic shoreline. Maybe I want to add some birds in the sky. I don't know. Maybe I want to add a few ripples. I'm just doing things to kind of create a more watery impact based on this. And you also might engage your white at this point. Bit of white for your waves too. So I want to really encourage you, go nuts. I don't really want to, have you do it a specific way. I want to give you free reign to once you've got that two color varied wash down, whether you do wet on wet, wet on dry, onto the big piece and it dries, that this is your canvas upon which you start creating a seascape. And there's no really wrong way to do it. Just assume whatever you do is great. I do something, but I kind of want to see where you guys go with this. You could introduce other colors on top, see what they do. If you're not sure how it's going to look, you can try it out in your testing paper first. So have some testing paper close by. Or you can layer a couple colors on top of each other to see how they look. This off. I don't think you need it anymore. And actually, I'm happy to demo if you need me to demo, but I might even pop off right now because I want to see what you do with this. I suppose I should like stop the recording since really although it's very zen watching you guys go back and forth. It's so zen. But let's recording. Get this part. Woo! Oh my God, Jonathan. Wonderful. I love how you got a little bit of the orange into the water as well. Oh, wow. Lovely. What did
Thank
you
you.
do? Did you mostly do wet on wet? Did you do wet on dry?
It all started wet, but sometimes I may have dried by the time I got to that. But I
Right. That's
started,
also a technique, right? You can do it in like, you don't have to wet the whole paper at the same
yeah,
time. You can take a straight portion. I like this though, because I think you can utilize wet on wet in a lot more of your work, to tone and to kind of create a certain kind of softness that we don't really get with wet on dry.
yeah,
Right? Wet on dry is like a little bit harsher. All right, let's see, Beth. Where's yours? You could like maybe drift in a little orange into the blue down at the at the
yeah,
bottom of the
definitely,
page.
definitely.
Okay. So
That's a great
let's
idea.
have you do that a little bit, just a
Yeah,
little bit more, just to
yeah,
see, because this is
yeah,
just an experiment
yeah,
about how to show. So even with just, you haven't even really added in much water texture beyond that reflection, and look at how well that varied wash works to kind
yeah,
of convey going back.
yeah.
It's so weird how simple things are, really. Like we spent a lot of time trying to make them complicated, and really they are not that complicated. It's like a lot less complicated than you need to. Oh, looks like we lost Beth. She'll come back.